Hello, and welcome to Setting the Record Straight, where we give you the facts, not fluff. My name is Silenced. I've been a professional airsoft technician for half a decade now, as most of you know, and today I'm going to talk to you about red dots versus scopes in airsoft. Now, before I get started, make sure if you haven't already that you click the first link in the description to check out my new website that's up and running now. If you need to get your gun repaired or upgraded, I highly recommend you send me an email so that I can help you with that. I specialize in accuracy services like barrel lapping and R-hopping barrels. Now with that out of the way, let's get on with the video. First off, I'd like to talk about what to look for in a good red dot first. Now, if you're going to pick up a red dot, you want to make sure first off that the red dot is powered by a lithium battery, such as a CR2032 battery. There are red dots out there that are powered by AA's. You want to try to stay away from those usually because AA batteries usually don't last that long, unless you're okay with swapping batteries out all the time. The other battery you want to try to avoid is the CR123A battery. It's very common, but it's very expensive. I tend to steer clear of any red dot site that uses the CR123 batteries just because of their cost. It's higher to own. Now, unfortunately, if the site that you want to buy has that, don't let that deter you alone, but keep that in mind. Next thing I want to say for what to look for in a good red dot is you want to look for a red dot that costs between $40 and $80, because usually less than $40 and you're looking at something that's very low quality, and anything that's over $80 is usually overkill for airsoft. You want to be looking for a site that is parallax free at 30 yards, not at 100 yards. Parallax is essentially where the BB comes into focus as you're shooting the BB downrange. It is also the distance that the sight is the most accurate at. Most sights come with a fixed parallax of 100 yards, meaning that at airsoft ranges, they are very inaccurate. So you want to make sure that usually the manufacturer will tell you, where the sight is parallax free at. Usually you're looking for 30 yards. That's optimal. 50 you can also get away with. Make sure that you get a red dot that has a standard screw and nut mounting system. I see too many of the quick release lever type red dot sights that don't hold tight and they fall off the gun. So make sure you get something that just has a generic screw and nut clamp system that holds it on. Like your regular cheap, like scope rings for example, have that type of a system for mounting on. Now, I prefer the open type red dot sights versus the tube type. And the reason for this is the open style reflex sights are less likely to fog in heavy rain. I've owned several of the tube type red dot sights, and most of them have developed, actually all of the ones that I've had that I've used in heavy rain have developed condensation inside the tube from playing in the rain, and it never went away. Even after taking the sight and sitting it in rice for a week, hoping that the rice would pull the moisture out, it always had fog inside, and I couldn't get rid of it. So I recommend that you get the open type sight because they have a much smaller area, and they usually, don't have that issue. They're usually more reliable. Open type red dot sights are usually cheaper and don't have as much of the sight blocking your peripheral vision as a tube type. A tube type sight has a much bigger aperture and there's more thickness there. There's more of the sight that blocks your vision, which I don't like. You want to make sure that you get a good brand like True Glow, for example, that has clickable windage and elevation turrets. So when you put an Allen wrench in and you turn it, when you make an adjustment, it clicks as you go, and that locks into place, so it holds adjustment pretty good. And make sure you buy the sight from a place like Amazon that will honor a warranty, because all sights inevitably have defects, or lemons as they call them. So make sure that if you get one and it doesn't seem to be working correctly, contact like Amazon or wherever you bought it from and get it exchanged, get one that's actually good. That does it for what to look for in a good red dot sight. Now I'm going to talk about what to look for in a good scope. Now typically I like a 3-9 by 32 scope for sniper rifles only. You don't really need anything more or less than that. I usually only use 6 times magnification for long range shooting. So anything closer than that, I usually use 3 or 4. But if I'm shooting really far, 6 is usually the max I ever use. So 9 is kind of overkill. You also don't need an objective lens bigger than 32 millimeter. Some guys want to use 3 to 9 by 40 scopes. That's fine, but don't go any bigger than 40, and don't go any smaller than 32 on the objective lens size. Now you want to get a scope that has AO, or adjustable objective. And another term for adjustable objective is side focus. This is a feature of the scope that allows the parallax of the scope to be set to your choosing. Unlike most red dot sights, which are fixed, you can control infinitely what you want the parallax to be set at. So you can choose where the BB comes into focus. You can choose what distance your BBs are the most accurate at. Now, as far as scopes, I like the Daisy/Winchester scopes you can get on eBay, and the Hammer brand scopes for air rifles, because they're low cost and they have high quality. They usually run between $50 and $70 for either of those two types or two brands. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what I think is better in terms of scopes versus red dots, now that I've talked a little bit about each. Now I used to exclusively run scopes because they allow you to be more accurate and shoot further. But that was 5 years ago, when most players weren't running RHOP setups with high quality BBs. Nowadays, players are more on a level playing field than early in Airsoft's history. We're talking just in the US. I only recommend the scope nowadays if you're using extremely heavy BBs and BBs that are very expensive, that you're trying to conserve ammo. I still very often will run a .4 BB in my AEG, and I find that when I do, a scope is the better choice. I can tell when I'm completely missing my target, and this helps me to hold my fire from my first and second shots. Or it helps me to hold my fire if my first or second shots can't hit it or can't get out that far. I can see that and I can hold my fire, not waste my expensive ammo. However, in most cases, a red dot sight will serve the average player much better than a scope will. They will be more situationally aware, which means they won't be focused on one spot downrange like they are with a scope. They're less likely to be flanked because they'll be looking around with both eyes open. They won't be afraid to move up, and complete the objective, to play the objective rather than sitting back. Usually players that have a scope just kind of sit back and don't really do anything. There are exceptions to that. There are people that use scopes and still complete the objectives and stuff, but generally, if you run a red dot sight, you're going to not be afraid to move up and complete the objective. Also, when you run a red dot sight, you can pop in and out of cover much faster and shoot on target versus with a scope. With a scope, you try to pop out and you have to kind of acquire your target and then shoot. With a red dot sight, you can pop out, shoot, and pull back, so you can be a lot more effective as a rifleman. And finally, players that run a red dot sight, their gun is going to generally weigh a lot less than if they ran a scope. So you're going to have a lighter gun, so you can run around and be less tired, we'll say, and shoulder the gun longer with a red dot sight. And it's usually going to cost less than a scope. Now, both red dots and scopes have their advantages over each other. It depends on what you want. So ultimately, you will be the judge about what you think is better and what you will run on your own setup. And that's really all I got to say about this topic. So this has been Setting the Record Straight. My name is Silence from Airsoft Team OSMD. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.